Hi everyone, it's Mystery Monday and I am Zara Altair. Um, and on Mystery Monday, we talk about writing mysteries. And recently we've been talking about outlining your story and focusing on the story using Bonnie Johnston's 40 sentences, sort of augmented for mystery writers. And today we start the beginning of the final act. So we're going to be creating barriers while your sleuth gets a clearer picture finally. Um, so you're heading toward the conclusion of your mystery as you begin this final act. But your ace sleuth still has a bumpy ride before the end. And as a writer, you focus on the complications, the twists, and building the killer's cunning. The cunning to escape being detected by your sleuth. So first, congratulate yourself for making it through the middle without one snag, because the middle is the absolute biggest part of your novel. So these sentences work. So I encourage you to use them. So writing a novel takes time, and you may feel like rushing toward the conclusion because you've been working on this so long. But hold on, build more trouble, and keep your readers turning pages. So here you're going to build suspense. It's time to ratchet up even more. Ratchet up that suspense. And your sleuth has just had a setback as we begin this final act of your story. So before a triumphant conclusion, you shift your thinking to trouble, to serious confrontation. So if you put your sleuth in physical danger, your readers won't stop reading. So I highly suggest that. Anyway, let's go to Act 4 of the 4-act structure and go through our sentences. So here's Bonnie's sentence. Forced to retreat or taken prisoner, your protagonist experiences a moment of hopelessness that allows him to see his misbelief for what it is, a falsehood that's kept him stuck in his flawed state ever since his backstory wound was inflicted. And let's refine that for a mystery. So your detective is captured or completely blocked from finding the killer, and the victim's world becomes more of a mystery. So she's not just seeing anything the right way if she's trapped or captured. There's just no way out. That's the way it feels, and that's what you want in this part of your story. And then once again, in story structure, you've reached the aftermath of the second plot point, the dark moment. All right, going on. Bonnie's next sentence. Something rekindles his hopes. Maybe he sees a way to defeat the antagonist, or maybe he realizes he'd rather die on his feet than live on his knees. Either way, he's ready to sacrifice everything to take his enemy down. So your detective, trapped and blocked, sees a way to get out of the trap. If only he can. His determination, maybe it's downright stubbornness, gets him to emotionally rally. So he's ready to take it on, either the problem or the killer. So this is a rallying point. It's like coming up from that big plot point, and he's regrouping. So in plot structure, this is the aftermath of the second plot point. Part 2, the resurgence of hope. Okay, he's got that spark now. So on to the next chapter, sentence, however you're structuring your story. The protagonist prepares for battle, does a SWOT analysis where both sides, identifies the decisive blow that will be needed to win the battle, and makes his plan. So for detectives, he puts those little gray cells to work and examines the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. That's the SWOTs. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for himself and the killer, whether the killer is identified yet or not. And he makes his plan. So this is a planning stage. And if you're flowing with the story, but here's the plot structure moment. It's the climax, stage 1, preparing for battle. Okay, your detective's lining up his ducks and getting ready. All right, the next chapter. As he takes the fight to the enemy, he may indulge in one of those "if I die, I just want you to know" moments. When he arrives at the scene of the final showdown, he learns that the situation is different than he expected. And this is another great place for a twist. So let's narrow it down once again to your sleuth. Your sleuth gets out of his trap, and if he hasn't before, he now knows who the killer is. He's finally got it. He knows who the killer is. He gets ready to confront the killer, but twist! Even with all that SWOT analysis, he missed something, and the killer has something up his sleeve. So in plot structure, this is the moment of the climax, stage 2, taking the fight to the enemy. And then in our 5th chapter, at the beginning of the final act, no plan survives contact with the enemy, and your protagonist's enemy has been crushing it since the last encounter, and both sides take damage. And when your protagonist redoubles his efforts, his forces manage to neutralize one of his antagonist's minions or resources. So thinking about your sleuth, before your detective actually confronts the killer, something comes up that makes his surmise just that, a surmise. The killer may have disappeared or skipped town or seemingly been somewhere else when the murder or murders occurred, or someone vouches for the killer and your detective knows the killer is dodging but can't get that confrontation. For the moment, the killer survives any accusations. So in plot point, you've reached the climax, stage 3, the first contact. Okay, so we're halfway into the end of your novel. It's getting exciting. It's getting exciting as a writer, and it's getting exciting for your readers. And the whole trick here is to just create a labyrinth of trouble. And I know that you've been brainstorming, and now it's time to brainstorm some more. So you want to brainstorm what confronts your sleuth and a twist, and all of this will deepen your story and keep your readers going. And one suggestion I have is all that work that you did at the beginning with your character Bible can pay off when you're looking for a complication or a final twist. If you're stumped and you're brainstorming and you're like, oh, man, I've just run out of steam, what is this last twist, this last complication? Go back to your victim and your murderer in your character Bible and dig deep into their character and see where you can bring up something, this one last something that confounds your sleuth. Because going deep into your characters will help you build believable problems, confrontations, and twists. if you try to make them up out of thin air, they will seem forced, and your readers will notice if they seem forced. So my suggestion for really creating all that conflict and bewilderment for your sleuth is to go back to your character Bible, dig deep into those characters, especially the murderer and the victim, and come up with new ideas to frustrate your sleuth. Okay, I hope that helps. So questions. Questions today aren't right from today, but I was talking with a brand new mystery writer the other day, and he had some really great questions about writing a cozy mystery. He had chosen cozy mystery as his genre, but he hadn't decided on his sleuth yet. So one of the ways I think that you can narrow in on your sleuth is to look at a world that you really enjoy and you'd really like to plunge into as an author. It can be cats, it can be cupcakes, it can be horse racing, it can be rowing. It doesn't matter, but go into a specific world that you enjoy thinking about and writing about, and then start building your character out of that world. I think that's one of the best ways to discover how to bring your main character to life. And once you've kind of connected a character with that special world in your cozy mystery, you can start creating that character, whether it's male or female, and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and to think about how in their personal life they're going to take on a murder. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for everyone. So you really want to go into that world and connect that world and your character. So I hope that helps if you're thinking about writing a cozy mystery and you're wondering, how do I come up with a character that, really grabs attention? I link it to that world, that special world that the character is going to live in. And then the next question, still with cozy mysteries, was, who is the sidekick? And I think that as you develop that main character, your sleuth, you're going to have some clues about who his or her friends are and who's going to hang out with them. I know some ideas we tossed around the other day was, a young person who has the same interests and wants to help but really doesn't know how because they aren't mature enough. And we also talked about creating a sidekick who's really the opposite of your sleuth. And that's someone who counters your sleuth. So, for instance, if your sleuth is someone who, thinks about things and deliberates and is constantly lining up all the ducks to take the next step, the sidekick can be someone who just throws that all away and dismisses it and just leaps in, and that's a great way to create conflict and suspense in your mystery, is a sidekick who just jumps right in and muddies everything up. So I hope those help you while you're thinking about your main characters. And the other thing is that, we've been concentrating on story and building your story, but it's going to be so much easier if you have a really good grasp on your sleuth. Your sleuth is who your readers identify with and who they follow and who they empathize with when trouble arises and conflict arises. So I can't stress how important it is to really um, build as much information as you can about your sleuth. That doesn't mean everything has to be in your story, but at least you know it so that as you come up with conflicts, all those things you know about your sleuth, there may be one new thing that you haven't used yet that you can use in your story. So I hope that helps, and I want to thank everyone for being here. On a personal note, I am doing the final edits for the Vellum Scribe, and it's a lot of work. It's just a lot of work. It's so detailed oriented, and it's just the opposite of all those creative juices flowing. It's detail, detail, detail. But anyway, we're on track for the Vellum Scribe coming out September 1st. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the great questions. And